So I'm sitting in Tbilisi, Georgia. I am Nicholas Callaghan, 18 years old, and I decided to leave home with nothing but a backpack, and I'm currently living on $10 a day. But that $10, mind you, is Australian dollars. So I'll put the conversions just there. But chances are you're watching this from United Kingdom, United States, or Europe. And 10 Australian dollars is goes a lot further in those currencies than in my currency. So let me begin with how I want to do it, because living on $10 a day is surprisingly easy as long as you know how to do it. Because before people travel, one of the main things is how are you going to afford it? You've never been to that country, you've never traveled, and you're going to think, how am I meant to know how much money I need to spend? And that was me as well. Before I left overseas, I had a rough idea of how much I would be spending, and that is all out the window. I have been living so much cheaper than I thought I ever could. So I want to begin by breaking down the three main expenses you'll have. The first one is accommodation, the second one is transport, and the third one is food. So if you can break down those three expenses and then make them all super cheap, you can be living on $10 a day. Before I begin though, I want to explain that you must be living in a cheap country to be on $10 a day. Of course, you cannot be doing this in Paris, you cannot be doing this in London. Mind you, you can, but you've got to be really good at what you do. So for standard, I'm in Georgia. It is extremely cheap here for most other countries, and that is a great beginning for living on $10 a day because of how affordable it is. So I want to begin with accommodation. You always want to be staying in a cheap hostel. So a cheap hostel often scares people. The idea of a cheap hostel, you're ridden with bed bugs, you've got local druggies there, you have no idea what's going to happen to you. Are you going to make it out alive? Are you going to be able to fall asleep on the first night? As a rule, I never stay in a hostel below 7.5 rating. So above that, you're usually okay. Of course, you need to read the reviews on that. But 7.5 and above, I always go for the cheapest hostel. I'll go on booking.com, sort by price, and almost all the time I will go by the cheapest hostel. And aside from saving money, obviously, at the cheapest hostel, you get experiences you can only get at the cheapest hostel. Because you will meet travelers on such adventures where their goals coincide with staying at the cheapest hostel. For example, I had met a Frenchman who had hitchhiked from Pakistan through Iran, Iraq, Turkey, Bulgaria, Macedonia, Albania, and then he was going on to France. He was sleeping on the street, he was hitchhiking the entire way, and he had stories. He had nothing but a mat to sleep on, and you would only get that experience in a cheap hostel, right? So experiences like that, the people like that, you meet really like-minded people as well, because I assume watching this you're also trying to save money. So you know, you meet people there, you learn tips, you become familiar with the lifestyle, you know. You'll see people doing things, you'll go out with people, and you'll never be worried about spending too much money. I've gone with people who were just here for the weekend and they suggest going to a bar. They didn't care what bar they went to, they didn't care how much they were paying. So I thought I'd go with them, why not? I ended up spending way too much money on drinks to no effect. They were happy, but it was a waste. And then I meet people who are traveling super cheap, super budget, and they don't do that. Their goals coincide with yours. If they do drink, you get the cheapest thing from the store. And around this area, around the Balkans and anything east, you can usually get 3 litres of beer for like $1. So that is one of the advantages of staying in a cheap hostel, the cheapest hostel, mind you. However, I find in big cities like London, Paris, often the cheapest hostels are rated like 5, they're dens. I don't stay in them personally, but often the cheapest hostels, aside from meeting like-minded people, are often really good. I mean, by my standards, I don't know how my standards compare, I really do enjoy it. So aside from staying in the cheapest hostel, you'll also want to try out couchsurfing. So couchsurfing is an app where there's a community of travelers pretty much, where if somebody has a spare room, a spare couch, they'll simply offer themselves as a host. You can message them if they accept you. You know, you sleep on their couch. Often they will feed you, often they will take you out to see the city. Aside from saving money, couch surfing is so good to meet people. you know, because you're staying at their place. The only people on couch surfing are those you should not be worried about because of how social, outgoing and friendly they are. However, as a woman, obviously you do need to be a bit more on your guard. I've never heard any horror stories. I've heard of people getting a bit suspicious and cancelling, but you know, I can't relate. I can't really offer strong advice. I'm sure there would be. However, just, you know, speaking as a guy, from my experience, couch surfing has been golden. And it really does it really has saved my life. I was in France and I had just gotten off the BlaBlaCar, which is like an Uber for long distance town to town. And I'm traveling very spontaneously. And in this event, I was so spontaneous that it is around 3 p.m. I get to the city of Tours, I think you pronounce it, and I had nowhere to stay. I'm not verified on couchsurfing where you pay and you get unlimited messages, so I sent out 10 messages on couchsurfing. I'm sitting at the train station. Their internet is barely working. However, I wait 1 hour and then bam, someone responds. A lovely old couple who are living in a small suburban area off this small town. They take me in for the night. They're telling me stories. She got arrested by the Soviets. She had a small plane. She flew into the mouth of a volcano. It is you get experiences and stories and meet such a wide range of people, such unique places you go to. So aside from saving money, which it is obviously good for, you pay nothing in accommodation. It is really beneficial to meet people, learn things, learn stories. So accommodation wise, couchsurfing is obviously the best one, but cheap hostels are important. You definitely want to be staying at cheap hostels. And then the next thing is transport. Transport is likely the most expensive thing. Catching a plane is going to cost you. Catching cars, catching taxis, catching anything, trains, chances are it'll cost you big, and often that is the biggest drain on expenses. So the first tip for transport is kind of an obvious one. When you're in a city, you want to be catching local transport. You want to be asking anybody you know, locals, if you're at a hotel, the receptionist, at the hostel, the staff working there, people who have been there, experienced travellers. You want to be taking local transport. Here in Tbilisi, you can have a card that you simply tap on a machine and it'll pay for you. It is 50 tetri for a ride, being 25 Australian cents, and the conversions that I showed you earlier, 25 Australian cents, that's pretty much nothing, right? You could find that on the street and you wouldn't even pick it up, it's so low of an amount. And that is how cheap you would be paying for public transport here. And mind you, in Georgia, you will get ripped off if you are not smart, if you do not care. I came from Kutaisi to Tbilisi, it was early morning, I was recovering from food poisoning, and I did something you should never do. I walked up to a taxi, showed them where I wanted to go, and got in. No questions asked. So I get there, and in my head I'm thinking the ride should cost between 5 to 10 lari, which half that for the Australian dollar, the conversion's already there. And he tried to charge me 50 lari. And that is ridiculous. Nothing in Georgia costs 50 lari. For what is a 6 lari taxi rider, later found out, he tried to charge me 50. So you will get ripped off. Taxis, unless you really need them, are not that beneficial. In Georgia, there are things called machukas, which are little minibus van kind things. You cram in there, super cheap. But you do want to be catching the local transport. And if you want to be going elsewhere, to a different town, to a different city, I do recommend hitchhiking. Now that is a bold claim because hitchhiking is notorious for being unsafe. Whether how true that is, in my experience, it's not. But I do recommend it. Even for solo travelers, even for women alone. Of course, I cannot really say how heavily I recommend it for the women alone because safety issues, of course, and something I cannot relate to and I do not experience or have knowledge on. However, I have met the amount of solo travelers I've met, female and male, who hitchhike is insane. Before I went overseas, hitchhiking was like a thing, oh, that's what hippies did back in the 60s, right? But I get here and I swear almost everybody I've met hitchhiked, and now I've hitchhiked myself. I'll link to a video of myself hitchhiking around France, big adventure, but hitchhiking is a viable alternative. People are friendly, no matter where you go. I can't speak for every country, of course, but everywhere you go, the locals will say, no, you cannot hitchhike, people are not friendly, it will not work. But those are the countries that works the best, right? In France, I was told I cannot do it, and I covered 200 kilometers in an afternoon. So hitchhiking Of course, you have to be on your wits. Of course, you have to use common sense. But otherwise, it really is safe. You meet the friendliest people, often travelers themselves who are repaying the favor from their hitchhikes. Other people who just want to learn from you, experience, see what happens. I've met people who wanted to practice their English. I've met other travelers. Hitchhiking really is a good way to go, and it saves you money, which is important. But hitchhiking, all you do is stick your thumb out, and a car will come eventually, which is the important part. I myself am not too experienced in hitchhiking, but by staying in a cheap hostel, people are hitchhikers, and it is so common. So you do not have to worry about that. Definitely do recommend hitchhiking for cheap transport. There we go, cheap transport. Also, other alternatives, if you're around Europe, there is a thing called BlaBlaCar, which is super cheap rides. You go from city to city, town to town. It is like carpooling. You have Flixbus if you're around Western Europe, somewhat Eastern Europe as well. However, it is a lot sparse. A few countries do it. It is a lot harder to get a ride, but it is possible. Flixbus, it is super cheap buses. Talking in euros, you can cross a country for €10 if you get the right bus. With BlaBlaCar, depending, it'll cost you between 5 and €30 if you're trying to cross the country, trying to cross a town. So BlaBlaCar and Flixbus, they are, in personal experience, the ones I have used mostly. So hitchhiking, BlaBlaCar, Flixbus, public transport, they are the key to saving on transport. With flying as well, budget airlines, you need to read the fine print. Their job is to catch you on these cheeky hidden costs. With Wizz Air, I have caught Wizz Air. They are extremely cheap. I've flown from Bulgaria to France for 33 Australian dollars, somewhat like £11, right? So you do get these extremely cheap flights. They are direct, they are convenient. However, their job is to catch you on unexpected fees. So read up. If your bag is over the limit, check how much they'll charge you for it, because I find often, even if I catch a budget airline, I have a carry-on bag, nothing else. With Wizz Air, it is just a bit too big. However, if they charge me, it is €25 to be allowed on the plane, right? Often €25 plus the cost of the flight is still cheaper than the rest of them. Otherwise, sometimes they don't check it, which I've gotten really lucky with. When I arrived in Georgia, they didn't check it when I was on the plane. So budget airlines, really convenient, but you need to watch out. And with food, food is possibly the easiest one to manage because it is simple. You grocery shop. Everywhere has grocery stores, everywhere has corner stores. The cheapest way I find is marketplaces. I don't know around other countries, but in Georgia there are always old people sitting on every street selling some kind of fruit, always cheapest. I bought a kilo of grapes for 50 cents. Like, you can get really cheap food, and it's cooking. All you need to do is cook. Even if you can't cook, I personally, I'm only 18, I don't have experience in really anything in life, but all I needed to do was buy pasta, put in boiling water and wait. Put pasta sauce on it, that's a meal. It was a terrible meal, but it lasted me 3 days and it was a good start. Now I'm cooking up omelets, I've upgraded, I'm involving eggs and vegetables and stir fries, and it is extremely cheap. However, with ingredients, go to the marketplace. Often I find in Georgia, if you go to a grocery store, what would cost $2.50 lari, it could cost $1.50 lari at the marketplace. So it all adds up. It's 50 cents saving, but every 50 cents equals $1, and every dollar is part of $100, isn't it? So all these little savings really do add up, which is the point of this video, which is how I am living on $10 a day. Also, I'm not saying don't go to restaurants. I myself am going to restaurants, and I am going to one for dinner actually. I found a really cheap restaurant. In Tbilisi, you'll find the cheapest meal being $10 lari at a restaurant, maybe 20 lari at a restaurant. This restaurant, Mapshalia, if you search it in Tbilisi, it will come up. It is 5 lari, 5.50 lari for the most expensive meal. However, the tip to saving money at restaurants is you do not order drinks. You do not order a can of Coke. You don't order a beer, unless you want to, of course, but if you're trying to save money, always carry a bottle of water with you, right here. I've always got my bottle of water on me. I never need to buy drinks. I walk with people who are thirsty, so they buy a bottle of water, they throw the bottle out, buy another one. You want to be saving money, you buy yourself a big bottle of water, 1.5 litres does me fine, and then I've had that for I don't know how long, you know? I have it until I lose it, till it breaks, I get another one, and this way I'm not spending money unnecessarily on cokes and beers and stuff. Of course, if I want a beer, I'll get a beer, but I'm not much of a drinker myself, so it is really important. Saving money, don't. Going out for coffee, if you want to go out for coffee, that's a different story. You know, going out for coffee is the activity itself. So by saving money on accommodation, on food, and on transport, those are the three main bulky expenses you find you will be spending while traveling. And provided you're in cheap countries, it is possible. Albania, it is. Bulgaria was a bit harder, but I definitely could have done it if I tried. But Georgia, it is easy. Georgia in the Caucasus, I definitely recommend coming here. You can live here cheap, and it is golden. I will also recommend the website called Workaway. It is a community where people will offer food and accommodation in exchange for help. Maybe you'll be a staff at a bed and breakfast, a hostel, maybe you'll be babysitting, maybe you'll be working on renovations on a garden. It is a wide range of things. Sometimes they offer payment, very rarely, but it can happen. And I have not had experience with it yet, but I have tried. It is very difficult to begin with. However, that is the best way, of course, if you want to be saving money, if you want to go hardcore. So I also would recommend a budgeting app. My budgeting app I use is called Money Manager. However, any budgeting app works. You want it to be simple. All you want is, if you spend money, literally any time you spend money, it could be worth 30 cents. If you spend money, you put it in the budgeting app, you go 30 cents, bus ticket, right? And then over the day, you will have a list of how much money you're spending over the month. And it is crucial, I find, to managing my money. If I see my money I'm approaching $10 a day, right? And I'm going, you know what, I want to stay below $10 a day. I'm not going to buy that snack I saw at the store. You know, it is so cheap here that I am able to buy snacks, but it's not necessary. And I don't unless I really feel like it, or, you know, it's just not something you need to do. So by tracking my expenses, I'm able to find out if I am about to go over budget, so I can stay below this $10 a day. However, of course, you will have more expensive days. When I say I'm on $10 a day, this is not every single day. I do not breach $10. Sometimes I'm $11. Sometimes I'm hitting $20, $30, depending on the day, depending on the activity. But it is so easy to travel cheaply, provided you are doing it right. One of the biggest fears of travel is the money. Myself included, I'm guilty of it. I was fretting about it, but it is achievable. All you need is a smile and an attitude, and you really can do it. So I do encourage you, if an 18-year-old can do it, I didn't know how to make tea before I left home, and here I am traveling $10 a day. I'm making friends, I'm traveling around the world. It is easy, it is achievable, and I heavily encourage you to do it. So I wish to come out with more videos eventually. I hope this one gets positive responses, because I really enjoy making them, and I hope people are enjoying watching them. But I'll come out with other videos themed about traveling, how I travel so young, and the challenges I face. But that should be it for now. So I hope you enjoyed watching. Yeah, thank you.